Morning glory, evening grace, brother and sisters. Glad to have everybody back along with us here with our Word Awakening and continuing a series here about critiquing the book God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything by the late Professor Christopher Hitchens. And as we've said here, whenever we begun, we are only critiquing the book that Professor Hitchens wrote, not him personally, but are critiquing, though, much of the work that he did as an atheistic philosopher that contradicts the Bible and contradicts the truth. And also appreciate all of you who are viewing these teaching videos here. We greatly appreciate it, even though those of you who do not agree, who are on the other side from where we are, we do appreciate you tuning in and watching us and stay in touch with us, as well as what we're doing here is going to be available in a book, form. And so getting right back at it here, we began last time showing first like why we are committed to young Earth creationism, and we'll just review that briefly here, and then continue on. And the first piece of evidence that we've got into here, proving young Earth creationism, is that there's very little sediment on the seafloor. And as we defined sediment last time, sediment is animal and plant particles from overlaying ocean water, as well as eroded material from land transported to the ocean by rivers or wind, like things such as ash from volcanoes and chemical precipitators derived directly from seawater. And kind of like we mentioned last time, I'm going to continue on with the thought here about, with there being very little sediment on the seafloor. If sediment had been accumulating on the seafloor for billions of years, the seafloor would be compiled, with sediments many miles deep. Just because the truth is, every year water and wind erode about 20 billion tons of dirt and rock debris from the continents and deposit them on the seafloor. And, most of this material accumulates as loose sediments near the continents, yet the average thickness of all of these sediments globally over the whole seafloor is not even 1,300 feet. Some sediments appear to be removed as tectonic plates slide slowly an inch or two per year beneath continents, and an estimated 1 billion tons of sediments are removed this way each year. The net gain is thus, 19 billion tons per year, and at this rate, 1,300 feet of sediment would accumulate in less than 12 million years, certainly not, billions of years. And kind of, just to reiterate that, every year, 20 billion tons of dirt, and I encourage you to research and look at some of the figures they have here showing this and diagrams, but every year 20 billion tons of dirt and rock debris wash into the ocean and accumulate on the seafloor. Only 1 billion tons, that's 5%, are removed by tectonic plates. At this rate, the current thickness of the seafloor sediment would accumulate, once again, in less than 12 million years. Such sediments are easily explained by water draining off the continents toward the end of the flood. See, this evidence makes sense within the context of the Genesis flood. The Genesis flood, not the idea of slow and gradual geologic evolution. In the latter stages of a year-long global flood, water swiftly drained off the emerging land, dumping its sediment-chocked loads offshore. Thus, most seafloor sediments accumulated rapidly about 4,350 years ago. And now looking at rescuing devices, like a lot of people who advocate for an old Earth insist that the seafloor sediments must have accumulated at a much slower rate in the past. But this rescuing device just doesn't stack up, like they claim. Like the sediment layers on the continents, the sediments on the continental shelves and margins being the majority of the seafloor sediments, have features that unequivocally indicate that they were deposited much faster than today's rate. Like, for example, the layering and patterns of various grain sizes in these sediments are the same as those produced by undersea landslides. When dense debris-laden currents, which are called turbidity currents, flow rapidly across the continental shelves, and the sediments then settle in lick layers over vast areas. See, an additional problem for the old Earth view is that no evidence just does not exist, point blank, of much sediment being subducted and mixed into the mantle. And now number two here, so the first thing that we looked at there was a sediment on the seafloor. Now secondly, we're going to look at bent rock layers. bent rock layers. In many mountainous areas, rock layers thousands of feet thick have been bent and folded without fracturing. So how can that happen if they were laid down separately over hundreds of millions of years and already hardened? Hardened rock layers are brittle. Try bending a slab of concrete sometime to see what happens. Nothing does. But if concrete is still wet, it can easily be shaped and molded before the cement sets. That same principle applies to sedimentary rock layers. They can be bent and folded soon after the sediment is deposited before the natural cements have a chance to bind the particles together into hard, brittle rocks. I like something else here, just to talk about this, is the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon now cuts through many rock layers. Previously all these layers were raised to their current elevation, a raised flat region known as the Calabar Plateau. But somehow this whole sequence was bent folded without fracturing. See, that's impossible if the first layer, the Tibet sandstone, was deposited over North America 460 million years, before being folded. See, but all the layers would still be relatively soft and pliable if it all happened during the recent global flood, like it is. Like just continuing that there, that region around the Grand Canyon, that's a great example showing how most of the Earth's fossil-bearing layers were laid down quickly and many were folded while still wet. Exposed in the canyon's walls are about 4,500 feet, that being 1,370 meters of fossil-bearing layers, conventionally labeled Cambrian to Permian. They were supposedly deposited over a period lasting from 500 to 120 to 250 million years ago, according to the old earthers. But then amazingly, this whole sequence of layers rose over a mile around 60 million years ago. The plateau through which the Grand Canyon runs is now 7,000 to 8,000 feet, that being 2,150 to 3,450 meters above sea level. So think about it. The time between the first deposits at Grand Canyon, claiming 520 million years ago and they're bending 60 million years ago, would have been 460 million years. Yet, we can look here at those sedimentary layers, of the Grand Canyon. The whole sequence of those sedimentary layers through which the Grand Canyon cuts has been bent folded without fracturing. That includes the Tibet sandstone located at the bottom of the sequence. That's a 90-degree fold in the eastern Grand Canyon. And then all the layers through which Grand Canyon cuts, including the mauve limestone, have been bent without fracturing. Seeing that phenomenon, was not even regional. The Tibet sandstone spans, through much of North America, like down into Mexico, then also, up to Canada. And then other layers span around much of the globe. Like old earthers say that it took 270 million years to deposit these particular layers. Surely in that time, the Tibet sandstone at the bottom would have dried out, the sand grains cemented together, especially with 4,000 feet of rock layers piled on top of it and pressing down on it. The only viable scientific explanation is that the whole sequence was deposited very quickly. And see, the creation model indicates that it took less than a year during the global flood. So the 520 million years never happened, and the Earth certainly is young. And we'll stop there today and continue on this thought. Going to be looking at more, kind of describing more rescuing devices and the claims that old earthers have of that next time. Thank you so much for being with us here today, and we'll see you next time. Until the debris and the shallows flee away, I am Dr. Cooper, and I love you, and I appreciate you.